1.
Here we go!
Hey everyone, and welcome to the Hannah Johns podcast, where we bring people closer to the sport that they love. I'm Hannah Johns, and today I have a few of the top media personalities in pickleball here with me to preview Major League Pickleball presented by DoorDash's upcoming 2025 season, which kicks off this month in Orlando from April 24th through 27th. I'll be linking the tickets and the info in my video description as well as at the end of this video. But quickly, a few intros. I have independent journalist and media contributor Johnny Barth.
Hello, Pickleball world. Good to be here.
Pickleball.com sports analyst Jim Kloss.
Hi, Hannah. Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
And MC podcaster and MLP team owner, as well as pickleball chick, Kaitlyn Kerr.
Thanks for having me, Hannah.
Well, guys, let's talk MLP. We're all super excited for it. The season is about to kick off. What are some of the biggest storylines that you all have your eye on as we head into the 2025 season? Kaitlyn, let's start with you.
Oh, I mean, I just cannot wait for MLP to begin. We've waited a very, very long time for this season to kick off. We have a lot of storylines coming. I mean, first, just an overall take. Teams have now moved to 6 players from 4 originally. So we're getting larger teams, which means definitely, we're going deeper into the player pool. That's one thing to look out for. Second is we have side out scoring for the very first time in MLP history. We switched from rally, which traditionally, if you were an MLP guru, you loved rally scoring. There were many people that, did not ever wanted to change the side out. So that's going to definitely change, people's mindsets heading into each match. There was a lot of trades in the off season. We can get into detail about some of them. I'm looking forward to see how the New Jersey Fives face off against the Dallas Flash. That championship matchup was absolutely electric. It was one of my favorites of all time. So I'm definitely looking forward to that one.
Yeah, no, certainly. I really think, it's going to be our second full MLP season in the season format. Yes, there's some tweaks. Yes, there's some rule changes. But all in all, this really comes back down to the Dallas Flash, defending champions. Can they repeat, even with some of the format changes? And the hunt is on for some of the top teams behind them. St. Louis Shock really will have their say by the end of the season. There's a few other teams in the mix there. Can't wait to see what happens.
Yeah, I think those are all great comments. I think MLP, obviously formats change a little bit from time to time. I think it's now kind of settled down to, I think for the first time, I have more of a sense of some year-to-year continuity. So I'm really interested can Dallas repeat? It does finally feel like a season where, the Kansas City Chiefs won the last Super Bowl. Can they win 2 Super Bowls in a row? Same thing for Dallas. Can they really win 2 championships in a row? They brought back the band. So did some of the other top teams. So I think some great competition. Can ALW dominate like she did last year? For a team kind of lower down on the expectation list, what kind of effort are we going to see from Ben and Colin on Carolina? I think that's a big story.
I mean, I think that's one thing that we talk a lot about when the drafts come up, that, in the past, women definitely were the key. You had to have really good women to compete at the championship level. And then it sort of changed, to having really good men at the premier level, and maybe challenger women were more important at the challenger level than the males, because, if you have a really good male, they can win their doubles, their gender doubles, and they can win a mix. So you already have 2 wins. But I do think the women are going to be, where we have to look out for here in this season. Again, can some of these, you're looking at deeper women brackets, right? We had to go deeper because of the 6-person roster. And you had 4 teams coming up from the challenger level. So now we have 16 premier level teams. And I think that's definitely going to be a big storyline. The other one that I'm really interested in is St. Louis Shock. I mean, I had them winning last year. They went down with a terrible loss to not even make the championship, but yet they brought Kate Fahey back first in the overall draft. She got the number 1 slot here. And so, they obviously really believed in her. I think it was a good move by them. I thought she was the best player available. And in terms of their puzzle piece, I think she's a great fit. And I just think she's an overall really good competitor. So I'm excited to see how the St. Louis Shock comes about this year again with two youngins and the guys, Gabe Tardio and Hayden Patriquin, and then filling out with Anna Bright and Kate Fahey.
It's a strong one for sure. And you mentioned the Shock. You mentioned last year's winner, the Dallas Flash. Who do y'all think is the best team going into the season? Johnny?
Well, I think you have to give credit where credit's due, right? The Dallas Flash, not only are they coming off the heels of a very strong championship, but you really see the emergence on the PPA tour really right now of Tyra Black and Georgia Johnson. They are a force. We see a lot of the shakeup that's been happening on the women's side of the game. And really, they've had their say here the past month on the PPA tour. So them asserting their dominance, asserting that championship swagger, so to speak, they're odds-on favorites, I would think, for most people right now.
Jim, what are your thoughts?
I think that's a good point by Johnny. I'll be posting my preview column on MLP up on pickleball.com, and I kind of see the league shift into kind of tiers. I thought last year was a fairly difficult year to predict the playoff teams. I did pick Dallas to win. I got that right, but I think I only hit on 2 or 3 of the 6 playoff teams. I think it was very difficult. This year, I see it very differently. I think there's a clear top 7 teams, and I think there's very clear 4 teams that just have absolutely no shot. You got to like Dallas for the same reason I liked them last year. Is they're the team that I think their general manager did the best job of paying attention to the strengths and or weaknesses of each player. An MLP team is different from PPA in that there's 5 puzzle pieces, there's 4 events and possible Dreambreaker. And so you got to have puzzle pieces that fit together. And there's a number of teams where the players are perfectly good players. They're very, very good, very skilled players, but the puzzle pieces don't quite fit together. When you look at Dallas, you see a team where everything fits. Georgia and Tyra are strong together. JW and Georgia strong together. Augie playing right side. Tyra's better on the left. It fits together. They're all pretty good to really good at singles. Everything just really snaps together. And that's not really true of any other team. There's some other really strong teams. KK mentioned St. Louis. St. Louis is my pick this year. And 4 really good players, but they don't quite have that same fit and experience together. Definitely the talent. And so you got to see, will it develop over the course of the year? And I think that'll be one of the really interesting things to see for that top tier of 7 teams.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to pick a winner. Like I said before, I think Dallas is up there. I think the New Jersey Fives and St. Louis Shock. I think those are kind of my top teams. I'm interested to see how the DC pickleball team does. I mean, they traded away Vivian Glosman, which they think is an upgrade with Jackie Kawamoto. I think Jackie, plays a lot more consistently, I would say, than Vivian Glosman. But Glosman has very, very high highs, but she also has lower lows. And so they took a shot at Jackie, and I think it's a really good fit. Jackie's a great team player. I'm excited to see how they do. And then they also, they took Riley Newman. They dropped James Ignatowicz and picked up Riley Newman. So that's one. Riley hasn't played a lot on the PPA tour at all. He hasn't been getting in a lot of reps. I have no idea what he's been doing in the off season. It looks like he's been training somewhat on Instagram. He's starting to push out some content. So really excited to see his level and his form level heading into 2025. But I think that's definitely a team to also watch out for. Another one that I think is interesting is the Texas Ranters. We have Christian Alshon partnering up with Eric Oncins. Eric has been one of my favorite guys for a while now, and I think he's hitting his stride. He's long, he's aggressive, he works extremely hard. He's got that competitive fire in him. So I really like Eric. And they also picked up Helena Jansen, who's another female that I think is definitely on the rise as well. I watched a lot of her singles matches. I haven't watched as much in doubles, so I need to see her play a lot more doubles for me to have a strong opinion of her there. But again, I like her. I think she's athletic. I think she works really hard. She looks serious. She's She seems very competitive. So, as a third female there under Etta and Tina, I think she could be really interesting, or definitely one that other teams could pick up in the future.
Yeah, actually, Helena triple crowns at one of our previous or recent challenger events. She is grinding. The girl has some talent. She's a good one to bring up for sure. And then I also, of course, want to bring up the fact that Alshon played Oncins in a match recently on the PBA tour and flipped off Oncins after the big upset. And people were asking, are they going to be able to partner in MLP? A month later, like, what's that going to be like? What's the camaraderie going to be like? Any thoughts on that?
I think Christian was just congratulating Eric on a #1 win.
Yeah, I think if it's a girl on girl fight, you have a lot more. What's the way to put it? Yeah, a lot more hatred and time. I think guys flip each other off, and the next day they're like besties. I don't think guys usually think much of it. Going back in history, I remember there was a time where like AJ Kohler was like getting into it with Federico. I'm sure they're fine seeing each other now, walking side by side. I could be wrong, but yeah, I think guys get over it much quicker than females.
Oh yeah, no, I would say so as well, right? These are a couple of real young up and comers on this PPA tour, but also in MLP. I think they're gonna come in with a chip to prove together, right? There's a lot of question marks here. You have two real veteran, stable females on this team. These guys, right? You got to like that team ownership as well. The Ranchers have been one of the very invested MLP teams from the very onset. So I'm curious what these guys are going to do, but I have a feeling they're going to put things aside and go to work.
All right. Well, we talked a lot about the teams we liked. Who do you think is the, let's say, least best team that you want to call out? Jim, let's start with you.
Well, I've got in that kind of that lower tier, my no chance tier. I've got Miami, Phoenix, SoCal, and New York. I've got SoCal and New York kind of tied for hopeless. New York was one of those teams that went into the auction draft having dumped everyone, like Chicago, but took a very different approach of a budgetary approach and ended up with a budgetary team. I mean, I like Zane Ford. I had Zane Ford at the beginning of the year as my breakout male player of the year for 2025, and he's done some really good things. But and Donald Young. Donald Young's got a lot of talent. He doesn't get a lot of high level reps in practice is the problem being in Atlanta, but probably the hardest serve in the game now, and right up there is the hardest forehand in the game. A lot of high level potential, but hasn't been able to translate it into a lot of pickleball skills. But their women, I think KK was the one who made the point earlier of the importance of the women now in Premier with 32 starting women. There's just a big difference between on the women's side between the number 10 player and the number 30 player that isn't true on the men's side. You could tell me who your number 10 player is on the men's side and who your number 30 player is. Somebody else could make up a fairly reasonable list and have that number 30 person up there toward number 10 and vice versa. Not so on the women's side. They've got Dominique Schaefer, Helena Spiritus, and Lingwei Kong on there, and that's just not a competitive team. Same thing with SoCal. They've got Udit and Irina. KK and I love Udit on our challenger team, but as a premier player, that's just that team is going nowhere.
So the only pushback I'd give you there, Jim, right? So when we look at, let's say it's the seller of MLP, and we certainly saw some teams that were looking more for win now mode versus, hey, maybe they're building their brand, they're making a few different decisions here. Out of that group, there's at least one group on there that I don't think you can write off yet. I think that's the Miami Pickleball Club. Specifically, what stands out to me with them, the females on that team, you have a little bit of upside there. We're seeing with Maya Bui, there's real potential. So I do think there's some interesting, I got an asterisk on them. Maybe they're not winning the league right now, but I do like Noe Cliff. JD as a second male on that team, you've got a French connection. Okay, you've got at least a solid point. But there is some depth on that team too. So I know they had Roscoe Bellamy as well. Again, another kind of young up and comer, has made some damage on the single side, has played some great doubles as well. So I think there's something more there with Miami Pickleball Club. So asterisk for me on them.
And did you have somebody you wanted to call out or a team that you wanted to call out, Johnny?
Well, I'll say this. If we're taking a look at teams that are going to regress to the mean and who's going to maybe take a step back this year, right? So I will say this, as much as I like the young up-and-comers for the Texas Ranchers, and I hope I don't get egg on my face for this, but I'm going to go out on a limb. I do have a feeling that there's going to be some regression there. And I do think this is going to come back to chemistry. So I know we talked at the beginning. I think those guys are going to put some of the maybe differences aside. But when it comes to late in the season, are we going to see them, start to crumble if things don't go well out of the gates? I think they're going to have a fast start to make a real run this year. They end up with a couple of losses early. I have a feeling they might be in for a slippery slope as time goes on.
All right, Kaitlyn.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with Jim here. I think the Hustlers are my weakest link this season. Mainly because I think they have, like he mentioned, they have strong, dominant males in Zane Ford and a Donald Young. High upside. Can they translate that? But I think their females. They leave a lot to be. Basically their females are not going to cut it at the premier level. But I do think there's other teams that you could put in there. I think, Phoenix Flames is one we haven't talked about. I mean, they really, we could talk about what other team, New York Hustlers were doing it for budgetary reason. Phoenix Flames are doing it, in my opinion, from a strictly marketing perspective. They have Tyson McGuffin, one of the strongest marketers, if not the strongest marketer in the game. Jack Sock, very well known from tennis. And they have Pesa, who's a local guy in Arizona. Jeannie Bouchard, famous from tennis. Jessie Irvin, a phenomenal spokeswoman for the sport. Also, obviously she's a great player. And then Alex Walker, who's local to the Phoenix area. So I think they did a really good job of taking from a perspective of let's build a brand in our local community. Let's actually get out into the community, have activations, bring people in. They're over in Asia right now touring with the team. I think the Bay Area Breakers Challenger level team are with them as well. And so, that's one. I don't think they necessarily went out and bought all the players they wanted from a let's win a championship perspective. But maybe we'll see how much revenue that they can do in sponsorship sales this year to see if that route was deserving. But, one that I think, did spend some money getting right players is the Columbus Sliders. They have Andre Daescu and CJ Klinger on the male side, with Paris Todd and Leigh Jansen on the female side. That could be a very interesting team down the stretch. I think Andre is definitely one of the most consistent and arguably one of the best males in the game right now. CJ's up and coming and playing really, really well. I think him and Leigh Jansen could do some damage in mixed, and Paris and Andre would be definitely hard to beat in mixed as well. So that's one I'm looking out for. But on the weaker side, trying to go through some of these other teams, I don't think Miami's going to win. I don't think SoCal Hurricanes is going to win. Chicago Slice is one we didn't bring up that I also wanted to bring up. We got James Ignatowicz partnering with his bestie, Max Freeman. James has definitely not performed that well on the PPA side of things this year, and I think has definitely lost some steam. He's not even in talks, I'd say, to be in the top 10 on the male side, where he was definitely one of the top 5 last year at the beginning of the year. We were talking about him in that group. So that's definitely one. Max Freeman has a lot of upside, and then you got a Callie Smith, who's, consistent, and then a Vivian David. And what Vivian David are we going to get here? We haven't seen her again play a lot, or, she hasn't been in medal contentions since, unfortunately, Thomas has been out. But can she come back strong in this MLP season? I think that's the question mark for that team for me.
Yeah, all great points. And I mean, honestly, there's no disrespect to any of the players or teams here. There's so much talent. It's just that some talent is at the top while other people are moving and shifting, and that's just the way any sport is. You guys called out. I want to talk about AL and Ben as the two of the top players and ones that everybody always brings up. And I think you mentioned at the beginning of the call that Ben but he wasn't that engaged last year, and that was really interesting. And AL, on the other hand, is so engaged. She's so fiery. She cares about every single point. You never see her not caring on the court. And do we think that we're going to see a more engaged Ben this year and a just as fired up AL?
I don't know. I think chemistry. One of the things that is again different about MLP versus PPA is the chemistry issue. Um, we haven't mentioned one. We've talked about New Jersey a little bit. One thing we didn't talk about with New Jersey that I don't think it's talked about enough is Zane. Zane Navratil is the best captain in the sport. Anna Bright, I think, is probably second. Zane Navratil, if you talk to the players on the teams that he's in, they will tell you what a contribution he makes as the captain, organizing things, making things fun, keeping people interested, keeping people up, motivating them, and contrast that with Colin Johns. I think Colin Johns is the poster boy of not putting forth 100% effort in MLP. And just look at the pickleball memes that come out about him and MLP. And, Zane has put it so well talking about Sunday Ben, that the best player in the game is Sunday Ben Johns, because you get Ben's full effort on Sunday and you may not necessarily on Thursday. But look at what Ben has looked like with Tardio. He's different. He's Sunday Ben on Thursday. Um, Enthused, into it, excited, clearly motivated to play well with Gabe. Do we get that Ben in MLP? We've never seen it. Um, does Colin change and have a positive attitude to help motivate Ben for the rest of the team? I think Carolina is, to me, is the biggest wild card team in the competition. They could be a great team. Their women are not great, but if you get a highly motivated Ben and Colin, that's a completely different team than a so-so effort from 'em. But I think Carolina is the big wild card team in this. With ALW, I think the big wild card person in the league this year is Megan Dazan. It is difficult, very difficult, and underappreciated how difficult it is to play with ALW or with Ben if you haven't done it. Tardio's talked about it, the difficulty of playing it and the pressure you feel. Megan Dazan is under the most pressure of any player in MLP to play at the level of success that ALW had last year. Mari Humberg was part of that. Will Howells was a huge part of that. Can Megan Dazan respond to that pressure and play to her ability and keep that team where we all think it can and should be?
It's hard to. I mean, I agree with a lot of the points that Jim just said. It's very difficult to assess the Carolina Hogs because we don't know what Ben we are going to get. Like he said, he's been extremely motivated. I have loved watching him on the PPA Tour this year. It's been one of my favorite things of all time because he is so engaged. He is happy. He is chest bumping Gabe Tardio.
Yeah.
It is amazing to watch. And so if we get that Ben, Carolina Hogs could be a playoff contender. If we don't, I don't know. I mean, that team is not going to go far. I mean, on the other hand, Annalee Waters from the very start has treated this like I love sports. Every time you step on that court, you give 110%. Doesn't matter who you're playing with, what conditions you're playing in, what ball you're playing with, anything. Everyone's under the same conditions. And yes, I do understand the fact that conditions, help the worst players more because it sort of evens out, if there's bad bounces or if the ball's not bouncing well or if there's wind, there are some issues that you have to work through. But at the end of the day, you're in a team sport. In every team sport, there are like when I played soccer, not everyone is going to be a top 10 pick in college soccer or on a pro team. You have to play with lower level players, and it's people like Zane Navratil that bring the best out of players. And if there's 4 players, the parts together equal 10 instead of 4, right? If there's 6 players, the parts together equal, again, more than the sum of the total. So I think Zane Navratil really does that well. And Annalee Waters, one of the reasons I love her so much is because of her heart, her competitive drive, her will to win. She hates to lose more than she loves to win. And I think that takes a team a lot further than just skill and talent. So I'm really excited for Annalee. I think Megan Dizon is up for the task. I think she's a veteran. Zane Navratil was speaking very highly of her when I spoke to him about it. He's really excited. He thinks that they upgraded in that position. And so, I like it a lot. I think Will is hungry. I just was with him in Florida. Will Howes was talking about his record. He said, I'm 46-2. What player does that? Yes, he is playing on the APP tour. But again, his competitive drive, his will to win. He signed with the UPA. He is going to be playing MLP this season, and next year will be on the PPA tour. But again, he's one to watch out for as well in the coming year.
Yeah, it's super interesting, right? When we look at things from a team perspective, it is a season. At the end of the day, right, you have to take each matchup one game at a time and really one matchup at a time, right? So, the reason why I'm gonna hold a little reservation for teams like maybe, the Texas Rangers to fall back a little bit is that, if you do get a motivated team, let's say Carolina Hogs, right, that matchup right there, we're now inside out scoring. So a little bit different game complexion, right? A little bit different strategy, for Ben and Colin. I think we would all agree that that's their comfort level, right? Is certainly side out scoring versus rally scoring. So now you take a look at that team. How do they match up in their first and second lines, right? When it comes down to it, that men's matchup is going to be a tough one for Christian Alshon and Eric Oncins, right? If they don't have the chemistry right out of the gates and those two teams meet up, that puts a little bit of the pressure on Texas then. And then you look at that team from a mixed perspective, right? Ben's clearly going to take up plenty of space on the court. He's going to feel comfortable doing so inside out. He's going to be able to really kind of impose what we believe to be classic Ben. And if he's fired up like he's been on the PPA tour here as of late, I'd say you could never write off that team, just simply put. So that team could cause fits. They could cause upsets. So it's going to be really interesting to see how these teams come out of the gates. On the flip side of that coin, though, you have a team like New York. You really have the star power in Leigh. And yeah, they had such chemistry last year, right? Will, Zane, Ryan Harwood, the fives, just that personality, Gary V, right? You've got such bravado and I believe that just permeates to the team. So will Megan fill those shoes and come in and do that? I think she absolutely could. So it's going to be really interesting to see. I think they'll bring just as much fire, if not more, than we saw in 2024.
And speaking of AL, the recent breakup between ALW and CP has been top of mind recently on the PPA Tour side. And of the 4 women involved in that, now AL partnered up with Anna Bright and Rachel Rohrabacher and Catherine Parenteau, free agents. Which of their teams do you guys think will have the best MLP season? And will we see that sort of drama on the PPA Tour insert itself into the MLP competition?
Well, I think it's safe to say out of the gates, right? Anna Bright, I don't think anything will face her. I think the way the St. Louis Shock played last year, when she is playing MLP, you can go back on some of her championship runs. She is just absolutely locked, and the team follows suit. So I have no doubt they're going to be a playoff contender and a championship contender. I feel the same way for Annalee. I definitely think the DC has the tools. They have Jackie now alongside Rachel Rohrabacher. That's a dynamic combo on the women's side. So really you're getting 2 of the best women partnerships right there in terms of both for women's doubles and for mixed doubles with those, talisman alpha left side guys in Riley and Deckel. I mean, those 3 teams I think are certainly playoff locks. When it comes down to it, if you're looking at the mad drops, I do think maybe this is a sore spot. I know Jim just had an article come out. There's a little discussion about top males right now in pickleball. Hunter Johnson really as the anchor for this team. I think that's still a quality team. I think the LA Mad Drops are going to finish behind those other three aforementioned teams, but that's nothing to shake a stick at. I think that's a really good quality team there. I do believe in Hunter and QD working together, both on the men's side. I do feel like that's a quality women's partnership with CP and Jackie, but I think they can make a playoff run as well. So no knocks on Hunter here on this one.
The only other thing I wanted to mention, you asked about, who's gonna. I think it's hard to say who's gonna come out on top. I think, you have Anna Bright and Kate Fahey, and then you have Anna Leigh and Megan. I think those two teams are, really, really good. And then you have Rachel and Jackie. I mean, it's hard to say in that instance. I wanted to shift our attention to one other team that we didn't yet talk about, and that's the Atlanta Bouncers. And heading into 2024 season, everyone was talking about the fact that Jaume Martinez-Vich was stuck in Challenger and that he should be in Premier. And him and Todd Fote had a fantastic season once again. I mean, those two played extremely well together. I mean, I think it was Todd and Jeannie Arquina that barely lost a match. And so now Jaume gets his chance in Premier with Todd. What can he do? I mean, they have Vivian Glasman, they have Rachel Recker and Victoria DiMuzio. But I think that team is interesting. If you have Jaume playing at the top of his game and you have Vivian Glasman playing at the top of her game, could they get some sneaky wins? Now, I'm not sure if they can compete at I don't think they can compete at the tippy top level here, but I think that they can get some sneaky wins with the players that they have on their team. I'm excited to watch that.
MLP has exposed some of the sport's biggest personalities, which has been kind of one of the fun things about MLP. Who do you guys think will be talked about as having the most antics out there or the wildest behavior on court this season?
I think that title is going to remain with the Fives. I think that every year they've been coming out, they've got the chance, they've got the crowd. I think that, that personality there as far as Zane and Will and certainly Anna brings some fire as well, but there's going to always be some clowning around with that team. So I think we're going to see the most antics with them.
Clowning around.
That's a good pick. Yeah. I'm very tempted to say JW, of course, but I had to put that one in. But I think it can depend on who's winning. Winning does change the personality of certain players, just as losing does. I think we saw it 2 seasons ago with Riley Newman. When Riley and Christian were together and were winning, before that season, everybody said, "Oh, Riley Newman, he can't play MLP." Suddenly, Riley wins, and he is a different person out there. Winning changes you. I think we saw it. I just kidded about JW, but I think we saw, JW with Georgia. I liked that chemistry before that season. The winning helped, and the winning brought out something a little more. So, on the downside, when Carolina's losing, I think that sends Ben and Colin down. So a little bit depends on who's winning and who's doing well, and who's up and excited. I do think Johnny mentioned Will Howells, and I think Will Howells is a good pick. Will has something to prove. I got a lot of comments and jokes and everything else about my top 20 list. Will Howells calls me immediately to complain that I don't have him number 1. I'm like, good Lord, dude, I got you at number 8. You don't even play PPA, and I can't win. I can't win with Hunter Johnson, even though I predicted at the beginning of the year that Hunter Johnson would be the number 1 singles player in the world, and the guy thinks I'm attacking him. Good Lord, what do I have to do? Hunter, I'm a fan. You're just not yet a top 20 doubles player. Prove it. Just look at the results. Look at the math. But anyway, but Will wants to win. Will is motivated. Will is going to want to come out firing at PPA 2026 when it starts late this year. And I think he's going to have a chip on his shoulder in MLP. He's a great player. He thinks he is the best player in the world. There's nothing wrong with that. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that. People will pick on him for that. There is nothing wrong with that. And when he goes out there, if he's playing Ben and Colin, he wants to beat him. And KK and Johnny both made great points about ALW. I did commentary on ALW in a bronze medal match in Mesa. She's never in a bronze medal match. Her in a bronze medal match. It was her and Ben against CP and Fetty.
Mm-hmm.
ALW, every point, every shot, she wanted to step on their neck and grind every single shot. The other three, they they acted like they had better things to do, and I said it to her after when I said, "Man, do you ever take your foot off the gas?" And she just said no, and she doesn't. I think Will's going to be like that this year at MLP. I think he's going to have his foot on the gas, and he's going to want to. If he's out there against Alshon, he wants to show he's better than Alshon. When he plays Diescu, he's going to want to show he's better than Diescu. When he plays Ben, he's going to want to show he's better than Ben. So I'm expecting some big things again out of Will Howells.
Kaitlyn, do you have a personality that you think is going to stick out this year?
I love the Will Howells pick. I think, Johnny and Jim did a great job of picking him out. I think Zane Ford is one to watch out for. He's an absolutely young, electric player. Also feels like he probably has something to prove. He is getting the shot in Premier, jumping up, not even going to Challenger, getting that first shot. I feel like that's a lot to carry. As well as he gets a Donald Young. He gets a seasoned tennis vet that has a lot of experience competing. So I think Zane Ford is definitely one to watch out for, but I'm gonna go with my partners here. I think Will Howells, he has the biggest chip on his shoulder. He does believe he is the best player in the world. And like Jim said, I don't think that there's actually anything wrong with it either. You want a firing competitor that wants to win every single point. And the partnership, I think the partnership with AL Dub, you have Zane who rounds out the team and Megan Dazan. I'm really excited to see the fives.
And in terms of the trades and the waivers that went on pre-season and will happen again halfway through the season, were there any choices in terms of players that teams made that made you go, huh, like what the heck were they thinking? Johnny?
I was pretty shocked that
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, just quickly, I was pretty shocked that the Phoenix Flames traded Andre Daescu. I had a conversation with him on the Talk Pickle to Me podcast. I said, were you shocked? I mean, the Phoenix Flames owners own, oh God, what's the I'm forgetting the paddle name right now.
Proton.
Yeah, Phoenix Flames own Proton, and Andre Daescu has been their poster boy for Proton since the very beginning. He was the first signee, so I thought that it was really weird that they traded him because, again, they've been so tight for so long. Andre said it was not a shock. They called me. We discussed it. And I wanted to actually, I wanted to win a championship. I didn't want to wait a year or 2 years. I wanted to win. The Columbus Sliders were drafting, a team to win. So I thought that was a pretty interesting one that I was confused about. And I guess the other thing was when the New Jersey Five selected Jeannie Bouchard, didn't make sense to a lot of us. Jeannie had historically not been as engaged. Seems like she's definitely picked up some training here and there, but I don't think she's ready to compete with Anna Leigh yet. She's definitely gotten a lot better in doubles, and obviously she's been pretty good in singles. But that trade, I think that trade had to have previous conversations beforehand. Which, obviously was the reason that they winded up trading her for Megan Dazan with the, New Jersey Fives and the Flames.
That's a good call out, Kaitlyn. It's so interesting. I think when all that was happening and breaking down, so there's plenty of banter on pickleball Twitter, plenty of discussions going on, right? There's a lot of opinions being slung around there. But it's so interesting because once that domino sort of fell with Andre and the Flames, you could kind of see what was happening there. Really, again, at the end of the day, these Major League Pickleball teams, right? And you guys both know as good as anyone, their businesses, right? So at the end of the day, understanding that, hey, the Phoenix Flames have quite a brand in terms of paddles. I think right now, Proton might be the third largest paddle manufacturer behind Yola and behind one of the others there that has, a roster, a stable really of pro playing talent. So they're making plenty of headwind right now. They're definitely making a splash in terms of marketing. So understanding that, hey, if you can get someone like Jack Sock, you can also then see that domino that was going to happen with Jeannie Bouchard. Certainly the rumor mill was happening that, hey, she was drafted. There was some chess behind the scenes happening. To see that kind of star power alongside Tyson, alongside Jesse, two players that had been just, names, household names in pickle for some time now. It certainly makes sense, but I also don't think they're totally written off, right? That team absolutely has something to prove, and they definitely have some chops to compete. So again, depending on that matchup, they could be in the mix at the end of the year for that playoff contention, right? It's going to be tough, I think, getting in that top 8 just based on who we're talking about, but they have the ability to do so. I do think that what ends up being a great byproduct there is that Columbus team. So Columbus, they're going to be, I think, championship contenders here. You've got a really, really dominant team, not just from, I think, the double side and the mixed side, but you've got, some contention. Andre might be the last player on that team in terms of the Dreambreaker capabilities, but he's shown that he can play some intense clutch Dreambreaker points before. So I do think the Columbus Sliders, based on how things shook out for them, that's going to be really, they're going to benefit from those trades.
Yeah, I think that's good. Columbus, one thing's interesting about them is no team has ever sent out a Dreambreaker lineup that was female, female, male, male. Could they be the first? I mean, that sounds pretty funny, doesn't it? I don't think it
Yeah.
will ever happen, but that's not ridiculous to send out Leia first, Paris second, CJ third, and Andre fourth in a Dreambreaker. Never going to happen, but we can wish for it maybe. But on the Phoenix trade, definitely KK's got it right. That was the weird one. Diescu for Jay DeVilliers. No insult to Jay DeVilliers, one of the best people in the sport, but that was done. They tried to trade for CJ because they wanted CJ to play with Andre, being both proton. They couldn't do it, so they just basically said we'll give away Andre so he can play with CJ and hopefully win it. And then Phoenix shifted their strategy to being a marketing oriented strategy. That's not a criticism. It's their team to run, their team to decide if it's marketing versus winning versus whatever. They went for marketing, and that's where that team ended up. But that explains how that trade happened. On the New Jersey one, one of my predictions that did come true, pat myself on the back one time, was I said I thought New Jersey had a trade in place before the auction to replace Mari Humberg, and I texted Ryan Harwood and I said, I know what you're doing. I said, even though you won't admit it to me, and he basically did admit it to me that there was a trade in place. The interesting one is after it happened and they had the deal in place to pick Bouchard and send her to Phoenix for Dazan, I asked, you may recall they bid on every pick starting with the second pick, and they just didn't win the bid because the deal was they were willing to bid 100, but not over that, and get Bouchard and then send her. What if they'd won the auction at the number 2 or the number 3 pick? They ended up winning, I think, about number 8 or so to get Bouchard. But what if they'd won at number 2 or 3 when Leia was still on the board? I asked them, would you still have picked Bouchard, or were you free to pick somebody else? And I never did get an answer, but one of these days I hope to get an answer on that one.
Just playing devil's advocate there for a little bit, Jim, from a draft strategy standpoint, right? There is such a thing as price enforcement. So again, I do believe, that's a pretty crafty front office group, just understanding, hey, really, what is the set value that they're going to put for players? They
Yeah.
had a former relationship with Leia, right? Hey, they would probably be fine having Leia on that team right now. However, they're going to make other teams pay for it if other teams want that player. So I think it's a smart move. I think they probably had at least a plan A, plan B, plan C, maybe plan all the way down to Z, right? But at the end of the day, I think what panned out for them is going to put them in prime position.
Yeah, no, I agree. I just wanted to find out what the whole plan was.
What's interesting though is, it's all just behind closed doors, handshake stuff. I mean, imagine they'd picked Bouchard and then Phoenix was like, you know what? We changed our mind. You never know. Like there's just so much here that like, you gotta trust. But you're trusting your enemies.
Yes. No, that's absolutely true, and that's a really good point. There are stories in other sports where teams have supposedly had deals in place. Like in the NFL, we got the NFL draft coming up. And the NFL draft, what most people don't know is behind the scenes, when you're trading draft picks or players for draft picks, each team has to call the trade in to the office. If I'm on the clock and I'm doing a trade with Johnny, I've got to call it in while I'm still on the clock. He has to call it in too. And it is not official until we both call it in. It doesn't matter what I promised him or he promised me. NFL office doesn't care. It's just you
Wow.
either both call it in or it's no trade. And I did wonder that was a really good point. I did wonder about that is what happens if the whole deal is, well, you pick Bouchard, and when you pick her, ship her to us, and we'll give you Dazan. And what happens if they do that and go, whoa, wait a minute, actually, Megan uses Proton, we'll just keep her.
Yeah. That's fun stuff. Well, the new scoring format is something that I find particularly interesting. We brought it up a little bit at the beginning of the call, but how do you think it's going to affect the matches and the player success? Because we saw so many players that we were relatively unknown rise to the top through MLP, and a large part of that was rally scoring. How does this affect? How does this change things?
Certainly, you got to think that this is going to be a little bit more attrition in some games, right? You would think that, hey, at the end of the day, game planning is going to matter, coaching is going to matter, whether that's from an actual coach on the team or from a team captain. Definitely pickleball IQ is going to be put on test, put on display. I really think, you're going to see still some of the best with the top half of this league. I really do believe that there's a lot of just pre-built success, I think, just based on some of these rosters. What's going to be interesting, though, is that you might see, I think the teams that are going to make the upsets, again, I think I talked a little bit about, Ben Johns, how we're going to see Ben Johns this year. I think that if there's a team that's going to make some upsets, it's going to be a team like Carolina. Like at the end of the day, they're going to be able to game plan. They're going to be able to kind of impose their strategy. And if you think about some of these teams that are middle of the pack, will they be able to do that as well from a pickleball IQ standpoint? You would hope so, but I think this is where that team can certainly kind of sneak into some contention there late in the season.
I think the two words that stand out to me is less upsets. In rally scoring, you have a lot more momentum driving games. A lot of games are tighter at the end because you have the ability to come back. With regular scoring, you're going to see less upsets. I think we're going to get a few pickles here and there. Some of these teams are just far superior to other teams in this at the premier level. So I think you will see less upsets overall.
It's just one game to 11, though, right? It's not 2 out of 3.
No, one game.
Yeah.
Right. So I actually have the opposite view. I think there will be more upsets because, when it's 2 out of 3, you've got often slow starters that'll lose game 1, and then they're the better team though, and they come back and grind it out in 3. I think you can. I think maybe you can see more upsets. I know in my own experience, if I'm playing somebody especially if I'm playing them for the first time, which doesn't occur here, but if you come out and you play somebody that's got a little bit different or unusual style, often struggle in the first game, adjust to the style, win game 2 and game 3. So what if you have teams come out and maybe play a little bit different style than you're used to seeing them play? A team we haven't mentioned at all today is Orlando. Orlando's got Fetty and Dillon, uh, not just good players, two great players, neither of whom have done anything in MLP. But again, I go back to Riley Newman or JW. They never do anything until they do something, and then they win a championship and get that monkey off their back. What if, a team like Orlando comes out there with Fetty and Dillon, and they just say, screw it, let's just blast the ball. They come out there and just blast the ball with those Yola paddles. And, you know, maybe they surprise a lot of people and just, whoa, I didn't expect them to play that way. Or teams that we've talked about that we think are underdog teams, maybe coming out there and just smashing the ball, trying to surprise the opponent and run out a quick game. So I'm not so sure about the upset thing. I was kind of thinking we might see more upsets.
The alternative was rally to 21, or whatever you want to call it. Do you think you'll get more upsets with rally or more upsets with the game, side out scoring to 11? I think you're going to get more
I don't.
upsets rally.
Yeah, I don't know that rally necessarily is the issue versus traditional as much as the length of the game. Because if you're playing rally to 25, um, that's probably the equivalent of, I've never timed it, but I would assume it's probably equivalent to about two regular side out games or so. Um, especially when you throw in the freeze.
I
So
think it's
I don't know. We'll have to see.
I think what they tried to do was get it a little bit, like, they're trying to make it equal almost. And so I heard that there's actually talk to move it from side out scoring of 11 to side out scoring to 15, to elongate it just a
Thought of
little
that.
bit more, because the side out to 11 will go, quicker. But rally, that was always a big push for rally, is that you kind of knew how long each match, or each game, would take. With side out,
Mhm.
you don't as much. You can get a lot more side outs, but obviously they have all the data, and so they're making the decisions. But we'll see if they actually do move it from 11 to 15, or 11 to something a little bit higher. But I do hear you. I think when you have regular side out scoring and you have matches of 3 games each, I think there can be teams that are, severe underdogs that win a game here and there. And so when you just have one game, there's always the potential of an upset. I just think you're going to get less upsets in side out scoring versus rally.
Yeah, I don't know. I would say, hey, jury's still out, but at the end of the day, if you're in rally scoring and you can score when you're the receiving team, I just think that's going to be less of a tactical thing, right? Like at the end of the day, that's where you'll probably see more of the guns blazing, I would think, right? At the end of the day, you just want to fire back, see where you can go. Obviously, when it comes to side out, the hardest the hardest point is going to be, hey, the last point, regardless of whether it's side out or whether it's going to be in rally scoring. I think the freeze was probably the big determination before. So, I still think there's going to be strategy. At the end of the day, it's going to depend on, hey, how much do we respect the two people across the line from us? And, if the respect is there, how long can you guns blaze before you've given away your serve and you're not getting it back? That is going to be hard. So I think this is going to require more strategy. I think you're going to see a little less in terms of the maybe parity throughout these matches. I think we'll see more division in terms of the top teams versus the pretenders.
Mm. Well, although we do switch away from rally, we are keeping the Dreambreaker, which I love. I think it mirrors other awesome pro sports where you have this sort of like last final 5 minutes overtime type situation, which is what the Dreambreaker emulates. What teams do you guys think are set up to do very, very well in Dreambreakers? Because I know we're going to see some.
I mean, look, I love the sliders. I think Jim mentioned them in the past. I think the Carolina Hogs are very interesting. You got Kaitlyn, Christian, Ben, and Colin. Colin is sneaky good. Obviously, we know how good Ben is. St. Louis Shock. You got Hannah Bright and Kate Fahey with Hayden and Gabe. That's another really good one.
Yeah.
I mean, you can honestly, you can go down the list. There's a lot. I mean, Dallas Flash, you can't write them off. You can't write off the New Jersey Fives. I mean, some of these teams are really good Dreambreaker teams.
With regards to the Dreambreaker teams, I think it's probably easier to go to, hey, who has the biggest question mark on Dreambreakers, right? So at the end of the day, what are the teams, especially those that are in playoff contention, that might struggle with the Dreambreaker? And I definitely think, one team that hasn't been mentioned probably enough is the Mad Rocks have Dreambreaker chops. So if that team can get to a Dreambreaker versus the Texas Rangers team, You've got Hunter, QD, CP, and Jade Kawamoto. Jade and Jackie both have some quality singles acumen on the court. If you match them up again, you just take some of those teams that are on the bubble there. Texas Ranchers. You take perhaps, I don't know, Chicago Slice is going to be interesting. I know Viv David can play some singles as well. Callie certainly has had some singles capabilities in the past, but I think that's where you're going to really see the difference in those playoff caliber teams is, who has the least question marks on Dreambreaker. Some of it's strategy, but I definitely think that, right in that middle group there, some of those bubble playoff teams, if there's a question mark, that's where I get concerned. So again, not trying to slight anything with the Texas Rangers, but that is just the team that if I had a question mark in terms of singles capability, when it comes to player for player and you're playing against the other top 8 teams in this league, I would put a little bit of a question mark there. Right. There's a few other unproven players I think you see as you go down the ranks a little bit as well. Obviously you've got some top players in terms of singles on, Utah Black Diamonds. You have Connor Garnett. Will you see any liability on the women's side of that group if they got to a Dreambreaker, right? So those are just kind of where my eyes go, where I feel like there could be some question marks if some of these matches go to a Dreambreaker.
There's a lot of really good Dreambreaker teams. LA is a good point, but there's a lot of other teams that are very, very strong at Dreambreaker. So I think Johnny's approach is right. Is it's not so much to look at who's good at Dreambreaker, but who might not be so good. Of my top 7 teams, the 2 I have are Texas and DC is the other one where I'd question them a little bit in a Dreambreaker, going up against some of these teams that are just super strong at Dreambreaker, running out 4 really quality players. DC, Texas, obviously have some talent, but I think they're the ones that have trouble. And that's why I think it's so hard to predict who's going to win this thing, because when you get to the quarterfinals in the playoffs, the final 8 teams, you've got to beat 3 teams to win the championship. And you're going to have to beat 3 really good teams, unless there's some fluke or you get a team where somebody gets injured right before the playoff game. Can you imagine? Say you're pick a team. I want to pick St. Louis this year. For St. Louis to win it all, they might have to beat LA in the first round, New Jersey in the second round, and Dallas in the championship or something like that. That's brutal. And not to pick on them, it's the same for the other teams. The playoffs are going to be brutal. Really difficult to predict a winner. You flip a coin 3 times, it's 7-1 against you. And that's what it is to win in the playoffs. It's basically, you're going to be about a 7-1 choice if you make the playoffs.
Yeah, so much talent out there, and the season's set up to be the best ever, and at least we certainly hope so. And very excited
Absolutely.
to see everything that's going to happen over the next couple of months, all the new talent that's going to emerge, all the storylines. We're pickleball nerds, all of us here, so we live for these moments. So I want to thank all of you for coming on here, sharing your thoughts, sharing your predictions for the upcoming season, and happy MLP season.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Anna.
Looking forward to it.
Thanks, guys.
May it be the best yet. There's nothing like it.